You've worked hard, been promoted, and are now a manager. And it's only now you find out that the job you were good at is no longer your job. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Diane, and this is Headflex.
Welcome to Headflex, the podcast where you can listen to real-time coaching conversations to learn more about coaching and yourself.
Join us, Rebecca and Diane, coaches with years of experience, to flex the sometimes messy hot topics in the workplace that we don't always talk about.
Today we're talking about the shock of becoming a manager for the first time. In this episode, you'll learn why the transition into becoming a manager can feel so difficult, and we'll offer ways to help that transition feel easier and fueled by confidence. We'll talk about why does it feel so hard to step up as a manager, some of those common traps that we fall into as first-time managers, and what might help that transition feel less of a shock.
Great subject today, and something that we hear a lot and speak to people about a lot, which is lovely that we've brought this to the pod today, I think. So I guess we start there then. Why does it feel so hard?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something in what we said right at the start there, isn't there? That you get promoted because you're good at your job. So whether that's, working in PR or, working in sales or whatever it is, you become really good at your job. And then you get promoted to manage people and you're not taught that stuff.
Yeah.
So you're mentored and you're trained. And the reason you're promoted into a management role is because you're good at your job. And then suddenly you find yourself with this whole other job to do that you're not taught.
Yeah.
Unless you work with us, of course. But you're not taught this stuff. And so that becomes then really difficult, I think, to step into that new role.
Yeah, because I think when you're at that level to be promoted, you're probably right in your comfort zone. Everything's okay. We're in that, what we call that flow, aren't we? That relaxed concentration. Everything is, not necessarily easy, but comfortable. You know what you're doing. You're probably at the top of your game. You've got the knowledge, you've got the expertise, you're probably super motivated, and everything's going really, really well. And then someone says, oh, you're doing so well. Let's do this. And you think, brilliant, I've done so well. I'm going to do the next thing. And then it feels like the rug's gone from under you because all that stability from being in that comfort zone is gone.
Yes. Yeah. And you've got to have that kind of beginner's mindset again, haven't you? It's a whole new skill set. And so you have to kind of go right back to the beginning. And often, everyone's really desperate to want to become a manager because it's seen as that next stage and that seniority. And suddenly you're managing people and it's that step up. And often you speak to people 6 months after they've taken this role on and they're like, I can't even get my job done. I don't have finding time for my job. I don't have time to manage people. I end up doing it myself. So all the kind of struggles that come with being a manager that people fight for so long to become one suddenly becomes really tricky.
Yeah. And I think there's also something in there as well, and you say everyone strives to be a manager. And I think sometimes we get stuck in that progression means promotion. And actually progression isn't always promotion. It's actually okay to develop in your current role without having to strive for promotion to another role. And I think, we often talk to senior leaders when they're developing their team. They're thinking, I need to look at the next step for that person, but recognizing actually sometimes the next step for that person might just be developing where they are now and what they're doing now and just being better at what they do now and getting some complementary skills perhaps to allow them to feel more fulfilled in that role. So I think that's quite an interesting one as well. And also that kind of piece to say, if you do take on a management role because you were good at that role in the first place and it doesn't work out, that's okay.
Yes.
That's okay because it's a different job. It's a totally different job. You said there it's a new skill set, and I think you have to be super respectful of the fact that managing is very different from an operational role because what comes into it are these pesky people. And all of a sudden, it's not just about the task, it's about leading the people.
Yeah. And it's time consuming. If you're going to be a good manager, it takes time and to balance that. And often, talk about it as being that sort of crunchy role, really, don't you, in the middle where you're still delivering, you're still pretty hands-on, you're still having to kind of speak to clients, suppliers, stakeholders, and you're also then starting to learn something totally new with people who also take up time. So I think there's the rising stress levels I've sensed, we do in our Headflex in Residence program where we coach, anybody in the business can come and book an appointment with us because it goes to that heart of accessibility and coaching. And we get people kind of coming in and saying, my stress levels feel even higher because I feel like I'm not doing anything good. I'm not managing people well, and I'm not even able to get my job done. And so the frustration and the stress levels really start to bubble up, and people feel deeply uncomfortable and sometimes even regret having asked to be promoted into those manager roles.
And I think there's a lot that we do there, isn't there, around stripping that back and go, well, what is your job? You said, I'm not even getting my job done. But what is your job now? Let's refocus on and reset on what your job role is. Your performance now isn't, managing just your performance, and you're not just being judged on your performance. You're actually being judged on the performance of everyone in your team. And that's a difficult shift. So therefore, what does that mean? And therefore, what is your job? Because I think, like you say, that kind of blurry bit in the middle is still doing and managing, and it's not sustainable.
No. And I guess it requires a different frame of success.
Yeah, lovely.
As well, because, we're so used to our frame of success being delivery, getting things done, showing all these things we've ticked off, being able to point to what we've done. And suddenly part of our day is being taken up by people where that impact will be felt, absolutely, but it's a lot less tangible. And so you don't have as much to point to. You're not ticking as much off your list. So if you're a list ticker offer, then that's going to be, that's quite difficult to say. But then you feel like you're maybe not performing as well, and your frame of success has to shift from being the person that performs well to then becoming the person that helps others perform well. And psychologically, that can really mess you about for a little bit.
Yeah, I think that is really difficult. And also, all of a sudden, you're managing people that perhaps were your friends or are your friends. And that's tricky as well, because how do you then reestablish yourself in a management position alongside a group of people who were actually your peer group? And I don't think people get well prepared for this. I don't think it's commonplace for people to get the leadership training before the leadership role.
Yes. Yeah. How are you kind of setting people up for success? Because, so much research by organizations like Gallup that show, the importance of really good managers. Google, I think, did a huge study because they were thinking about taking managers out of the system. And actually all their research pointed to the fact that people performed well, were engaged, were motivated because of the way that the person they had managed them. And so suddenly they doubled down on the training and the development of their managers because they saw the importance on productivity. So yeah, when you step into that role as a manager for the first time, it can be a real shock. And I think there's lots of traps, aren't there, that first-time managers fall into as well, really. So yeah, I think maybe let's talk about some of those. So if somebody's listening to this who has just stepped into that role, you can be a little bit aware of maybe some of those traps that people fall into.
Yeah, and some of those, difficulties that are common and normal, and and that's okay. Yes. Sometimes you've got to sort of wade through it all to come out the other side, haven't you? And I think one of those things that we see quite a lot, and particularly when we are on our Headflex in Residence programs, isn't it? Because someone that's booked in to come and see us on those days is normally coming in to see us because there is something that they really are, struggling with, or something quite new or change particularly is a thing, isn't it? And I think sometimes it's that avoidance of making things difficult, avoiding maybe giving some feedback that could be perceived as negative, or maybe avoiding a difficult conversation, and therefore things are not getting addressed. And over time, that can cause a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you just avoid having those difficult conversations. And like you said, because sometimes, 3 weeks ago, they were the people you're going out for lunch with or going to the pub with. They were your peers, and some have become your friends, and suddenly you're now managing them. So that ability to have those difficult conversations can be really difficult. And I think also you just try and keep doing what you've always done. So you keep piling away with the work, don't you? I've got to do all of this work because that was my that was my focus of success. And I'm also trying to manage. So that ability to start delegating, to start stepping back, to have the confidence to say, I don't need to do this to prove my worth anymore, but this is something that somebody else can do. So you often see first-time managers like holding on to everything for dear life to try and prove that nothing's slipping and I've got it all and I'm okay and I'm under control.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's not uncommon in quite senior leadership, isn't it? You know, delegation, relinquishing control. I think there is a relationship here with control. You know, if you feel like you're controlling what's happening, then you are able to control the outcome. Whereas actually, if you are able to relinquish some of that control, pass over some of that responsibility, allow others to flourish, then that team can become more than the sum of their parts.
Yes.
But that's a really hard thing to kind of step into. It feels quite risky.
Yeah. Well, also, I suppose because from the day one that you start work, your identity is so tied up with delivery. And so you're known for your delivery. You're known for the things that you're emailing over to somebody. You're known for the outputs. And so your work identity is tied up here. And suddenly somebody's saying, oh, no, it's not about that anymore. Your work identity is about how you're enabling others to do that. It's just like, oh, okay. Let me just get my head around that and then I'll do that. But yes, I think it's your measurement of success becomes very different.
Yeah. And that's a big shift.
Yes.
And it's trying to, you know, find the new skills and strategies that will enable you to develop others to be successful collectively, rather than actually just relying on your own resources, which is what we're used to. And we know our own resources pretty well. We know what we're good at. We know what we're not so good at. Well, to a certain extent anyway. But we actually perhaps may not be fully aware of those resources around you. And I would always sort of, you know, give yourself that time, give yourself that pause to have a look around. You know, what have I got here? Who am I working with? Do I know their strengths? Do I know their areas where I can stretch them? You know, do I know who's the best person to put on for a particular task? All that sort of good stuff.
Yes, yeah. And, you know, everyone goes through the similar things. You know, if we're doing group coaching and, you know, if we go in and do group coaching with a group of first-time managers and you know, they kind of co-coach each other, you sort of set them up and then they co-coach each other because they've all got similar experiences and they're finding ways to navigate that. And these wonderful kind of conversations emerge where they go, you know, I've tried this and this could be helpful, or I totally get that. This is how I relate to that. So there's some sort of form of bonding that goes on over becoming a first-time manager that, you know, there's some mentorship, I think, of your peers in that respect because everyone goes through the same thing.
Yeah, I love that. There's a program that I get involved in quite regularly, and one of the follow-ups to the program is once they've all been through that and, you know, passed all their assessments and what have you, we follow that up with an open kind of workshop and we do a little bit of peer coaching around that. And one of the questions that we ask before the session is, you know, what are your leadership challenges? What have you found most difficult? And it's surprising how similar they are. You know, they often come up with very, very similar things. And then just that level of tension, just to see it lifting when they go, oh, do you have that too? Yeah, I have that too. And I think it's really nice to kind of recognize that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to speak to each other. It's okay to share challenges, because perhaps even if it's not a challenge that you're sharing with a peer who's at the same level as you, it could be somebody much, much higher up the scale, but I bet they remember it. Yes. And I bet that's happened too. And maybe still happening sometimes. So
yeah, that idea of asking for help can just make it feel less of a shock and less lonely. I think it can feel quite lonely when you first step into that role, can't it? Because you feel like you're the only person that's ever done this before. And so asking for advice, finding somebody that could be a mentor for you on how to do things. And because there's going to be constant things that come up that are going to be challenging. So yeah, that idea of asking for advice. What have you found helps kind of make it less of a shock for people that you've coached or teams that you've coached?
Yeah, I found that peer support is definitely a good one. The loneliness that you mentioned, I think that's, you know, so apparent, particularly if you've been promoted from within. So all of a sudden, you've left all your mates behind, you don't fit into this management crew because you're new and you still probably feel like the rest of the people that you're really comfortable with and work with. And then all of a sudden there you are on your own. And I find when we coach through this is it's very much finding an acceptance that you don't have to have all the answers. Just because your title now says manager, you don't have to have all those answers. Ask for opinion, ask for questions, ask the questions of the people that you're working with, ask people to what they need from you. You know, what's missing? How can I help? All those good things that might make you feel like you're not as capable as you should be, but actually understanding and accepting that, why should I be brilliant? I've literally just started a new job.
Yes, yeah.
I'm learning. Like you said, we're going into first day phase, learning phase.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, it's quite a long time ago now, but I do remember becoming a manager for the first time and partly thinking, you know, it's my job to pass on all my, 5 years of wisdom that I have. And, it's my job to give advice and to guide and to tell. And, you fall into that trap of thinking that part of being a manager is to be this person and go, well, in my deep experience over the last 2 years. So it is noticing when you're stepping in and rescuing and fixing and giving advice when actually all the question needs to be is, what are you struggling with and how can I help?
Yeah, because I think there is the tendency to rescue and fix, isn't there? Oh, there's a problem, right? I'll find the solution. I'm the manager, so I need to give the solution. Whereas actually, you might have the wisdom of 5 years experience, but the collective wisdom within your team might be a whole lot more than those 5 years. And therefore, let's draw on that. Yeah. And that's okay. And I think just understanding and recognizing that it's okay not to come up with a response to everything. It's okay to work together and collectively solve the problem, I think can take a little bit of tension and stress away.
Yes. Yeah, going back to like how stressful it can feel when you're trying to think that you've got to fix everyone and do everything for everybody. Actually just taking that off your shoulders can just relinquish a little bit of pressure. When you say that to somebody, they go, oh, yeah, actually, no, I don't have to do that. It's okay. That's not how I'm being judged. And and again, it's like, how am I being judged? How's my performance being measured? Shift. So yeah, really understanding that from day one and learning a bit of coaching, learn how to coach a bit,
How does it feel to be told what to do, or is it feel better for you to be asked what to do? So I think it's sometimes stepping back and go, how do you like to be managed? What would work for you if you were being managed? That shift in perspective, I think, can make such a difference. If you find yourself using language like, what you need to do is, I know exactly what's going on here, do you?
Yes. Yeah, God, language is such a biggie, isn't it, to get people thinking. But I love that exercise around, I think at the start of some of the sessions that I do with first-time managers is getting people to really think about a time when they feel like they've really flourished, where they've really been flying, where they're motivated and engaged, and then get them to think about the person that was managing them at the time. And what were the qualities and the behaviors that they saw in their own manager, and how did that really support them? And then the flip, where did they find a time in their career where they felt stagnant, where they felt demotivated, where they felt undervalued? And then think about the behaviors. And often, of course, it's the, micromanagement, it's the slightly passive aggressive, it's the rescuing and the fixing. So it's all of those behaviors. So that's quite a useful exercise. Again, self-reflection, building awareness, all those great things that we do in coaching become part of this. So yeah.
And notice if you've learned any of those behaviors that have crept in. Because sometimes people can be poorly managed and they recognize they were poorly managed. However, their assumption therefore is that's how they manage, because that's their only experience of being, even though you kind of know you didn't like it and it didn't sit particularly well for you and it didn't really allow you to perform at your best. That's your experience of management. And it's, again, recognizing that you can do it your way, that you can find your own management path. You can find your own management style, and perhaps understanding how to flex that style depending on circumstance. It doesn't just have to be the experience that you've experienced, particularly if that wasn't a positive one. Yeah. So I think that's a really lovely exercise to reflect both sides.
Yes. Yeah. It's not, you don't have to carry the identity of your old manager into how you manage. But there's always work to be done. It's like you said right at the very start, this is a first time manager. That's why we're saying first. And so just learning who you are as a manager, who you want to be as a leader, what are the qualities that are really important to you, what are your values, how are you going to do that? So there's so much in this. I think it's there are many people that really relish becoming a manager. Others just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I've recently been with coach somebody and they've taken themselves off the managing side. They just want to go really deep into the technology that they're developing. And there was a role for them in that. And they've recognized this is not where they want to be. It's not where they have their energy from. It's not where they're at their best.
It's not for everyone. No, leadership and management doesn't suit everybody. Yeah. And I think when you are, when you have approached that as well, and you've made that step into management, recognize that it's new and check in. Check in with people, have regular one-to-ones with people, not to check how they're doing or to stand over their shoulder to be in control, but to check in on how you're doing as well. What do you need from me? How can I help you? What could I do better? What would you like me to do differently? We've got an opportunity now, new manager. Are there any changes that you'd like to see that would help you progress and move on and do well and perform better? There's nothing wrong with asking the question.
No, absolutely. So talking of questions, shall we move into our self-coaching questions? So if people are at home thinking about this, they can start to do their own work. Okay, so after each episode, we offer 3 coaching questions to help you self-coach on the subject we've discussed. So take 5 to 10 minutes out of your day to pause and think about how you can use what you've heard today in your working life. So question 1, what trap have you fallen into as a first-time manager and what could you change? Question 2, what more could you be delegating? What's stopping you? And question 3, what is one conversation you've been avoiding that could help your team progress? So becoming a manager is not just a promotion. It's a shift in mindset and identity, and it takes practice. If you're interested in training and coaching for your first-time managers, do drop us a note and we can have a chat. And if you're a first-time manager, we'd love you to comment on what you found to be the biggest surprise when stepping into that role.
So don't forget to subscribe and follow for more coaching conversations. Thank you for listening.